this is my understanding of what has happened. Mm-hmm. I don't think that this election was purely a contest between the NDC and the NPP. Mm. Something emerged which escaped many people. I mean, all the analysts, the political pundits and so on, could not see it. But it must be clear now that something extraordinary has happened, which we couldn't read scientifically. What I suspect or think happened was that a certain mass movement emerged. It was a shapeless and leaderless movement, you understand, which was largely youth-led and youth-instigated, and which was looking for change. And because it was shapeless and leaderless and so on, it was difficult to catch that under the radar. Because clearly, a huge tsunami has swept across the country. I mean, these elections are shocking for everybody, you understand? And I firmly believe that it is that which has hit the country. I mean, things have happened that a couple of months ago, everybody would have thought was impossible. My first shock was when I was listening to the results of the elections, and I found that NPP could actually score 0 in some polling stations. Never happened before. 0. 0 as in nothing. Nobody in the polling station area voted for NPP. That's absolutely shocking, you understand? You have a situation where, as we sit, NDC could end up with about between 183 and 185, constituencies, members of parliament. Who could have believed this? Who could have thought about this? My understanding is that the NDC itself was calculating on winning 150 seats.
Yeah.
Boom! Now 183, 185 seats in parliament. I mean, that's really shocking. I've seen some persons, largely from the New Patriotic Party, who are doing some very, very poor analysis. And it's this poverty of analysis which also contributed to this massive defeat. And what do? They just take the numbers and then say that, the NDC votes did not change. NDC had 6.7 million votes, which was not substantially different from what they had in 2020.
6.3.
Yeah, 6.3 in 2020. Yes. And therefore, NDC members and supporters continue to vote for NDC. It is we in the NPP who lost our supporters. I mean, the poverty of this analysis.
Illiterate and pedestrian.
It's so poor.
Why so?
Okay. How do you know? How do you know what actually went into the 6.7 million? How do you know? Especially when the vote is secret. How do you know? This 6.7 million could include NPP members who were disillusioned, who wanted change, and who then voted for NDC. It could include first-time voters.
In fact,
it could include undecided voters. How do you discount all of that?
When you speak
when
you speak about first-time voters,
yes,
the 2024 election, the register had about 1.8 million, 1.8 million new voters. So when people compare 2020 to 2024, it is as if the voter population is static. The same people who voted in 2020, the same people, were those who voted in 2024. So therefore, you can take the 2020 figures and then do an addition or subtraction and come to the conclusion that it came. Why are you not accounting for the 1.7 million new people who were not part of the voters register in 2020, but are part of the voters register today? How do you account for them? That 1.7 million, almost 1.8 million people who are now on the roll. How do you account for them in that kind of analysis?
It's so pedestrian, it's so unscientific. This is voodoo mathematics. You understand? And yet, they are pushing it around all over the place and so on. Now, let us assume that even the analysis they are doing is correct. Haven't we lost the elections? Is the result not shameful? Is the result not devastating? I mean, really? And you know, if you listen to them very closely, I mean, this morning as I was coming, I was listening to one of the big men in the NPP do this analysis. And you know how he concluded? That this means that we can come back to power in 2028. If this is the kind of analysis we are going to use to organize your campaign in 2028, you will lose again.
In fact, Kwesi,
you will lose massively again in 2028.
When you even
this kind of analysis.
In fact, Kwesi, when you even decide to do 2020, you see, we always say that that's for data. You can decide to express data and interpret data.
The same set of data
to suit however you want it.
Differently
but
based on who's
looking at it. An empirical basis for data analysis.
Of course.
There has to be an empirical basis.
Because,
otherwise, why?
If you decide to start, because if you decide to start from 2020, why won't you step back to 2016? Why won't you step back to 2016 and begin to analyze the numbers from 2016 and say that in 2016 this candidate got A and then B? Because when you also go from 2016, you will see a decline if you decide to even use the numbers.
When I get to my turn, I'll go from 2016 and give the picture so we can appreciate.
Yeah, but the point I am making is that to the extent that the voter roll is not static, you can't just take those numbers and do those analyses, because I'm saying that between the 2020 register, the register that was used for 2020 and 2024, there are about 1.8 million new voters. How do you account for these persons in your analysis? Because if you don't account for them, then you are proceeding on the basis that the same people who are on the roll in 2020 are the same people on the roll in 2024. That's the basic flaw. And that is why I say that it is pedestrian and it is unintelligent.
Even if you assume that the same people who were on the roll in 2016 or 2020 are the same people on the roll today, there could still be shifts.
Of course.
Which would not change the absolute number.
Of course.
But there could still be shifts.
If I mean, following global info analytics, when I like to go beyond the 53% and 40-something% and drill down to the data, you find something interesting. They kept people who voted for. And you see, we also assume that everybody who votes for a particular candidate is from the candidate's party.
Yeah.
Which is the biggest mistake that people make. Because people make choices on the basis of many. It could be that in 2020, free SHS. Perhaps people who had benefited, whether they are parents or students, you don't have a number to even account for that. People who did that on the basis of that policy, not because they belong to a party. So you don't even proceed on the assumption that every single person who voted for you is a member of your party. To say that then those votes are constant for you at every point in time, you have those votes. But I can understand the purpose that analysis like that serves.
Of course.